So good morning, Chucky.
Good
Chucky.
morning,
Chucky.
Chukky. Good morning. Good morning.
Okay, so what did your let me just start by saying thank you so much for this time together. We're just going to have a casual conversation. We had a conversation earlier this week. A dear friend, Julie, Julie Ducharme, introduced
Yep.
us, and we started to have this conversation and found so many common themes between our lives and how we live our lives. I thought, oh my gosh, we need to just record a conversation and just make it wide open and
Mhm.
hopefully maybe put it out there so that people can get to know you a little bit better and maybe a little deeper because people know you as someone, and I'd like to kind of get to know you a little deeper than we did
Mhm.
this week and
Yeah.
just see where it goes from there, if you're okay with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I'm honored and blessed to have this opportunity to just connect with you one on one. If other people uh, gain value from our conversation, well, then that's awesome. But to me, I'm just grateful that I have this opportunity to speak with you one on one, and even just to piggyback what you just said, that's one of the challenges, of having such high level success as an athlete, especially in America and the way that sports, and here we are, in college football championship season, Super Bowl seasons, where there's this narrative around what it means to be a football player. And one thing that I always like to remind my clients and people I work with, and friends and family too, is that even the people you see in the movies, the people you hear on the radio, the people you see in politics, everybody's somebody's son or daughter. And, each one of them, even though they're doing something that you may have a story around what you believe they're doing, there's real emotions going on with that person. There's real struggles. They've had heartbreak. They've had successes just like everyone else. And, I'm just grateful that you're seeing me as a person and not just seeing me as a being instead of a doing, if you will.
Yeah, yeah,
You
absolutely. I remember having a dialogue pretty recently with quite a few football players, and we did a roundtable at the Rose Bowl, I'd love for you to meet some of the people that were that have said some of these things, and I know you know many of them, but uh,
know.
many of them, some of them were already football players and playing right now and pretty superstars. And then some of them were people who left in because of an injury or some things. And we also had their mother with us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got an opportunity to really understand from a mother's perspective and from a parent's perspective, and then from a community perspective, because many of them do so much in the community. And I feel like, first of all, we're all humans.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter where we go around the world, we are humans. And um, one of the things you said about going into the Super Bowl or going into whatever your Super Bowl really is, and
Mm-hmm.
whatever your highest heights is, there's a journey. And when I showed up as JP Morgan Chase managing director, or when I show up as working in the highest levels, or different places that I've been, people don't see the behind the curtain. People only see the finished product. You go to a ballet, you see the finished product. You don't see the ballerina's broken toes, or
Right.
right? You just
Yeah.
see finished product. And so
Mm-hmm.
I like to kind of go behind the curtain a little bit and really understand kind of how you think. I know you've had a lot of training, but let me take you back to the time when you've had the biggest, what I call a crucible. A crucible is a time in your life that was so in the moment, like so overpowering that you just felt, how in the world am I gonna crawl out of this moment?
Hmm.
And what was that crucible? How did you find your way? Whether it was when you were a little boy or as
Hmm.
an adult, and then how
Hmm.
did you find your way? And then today, how do you look back at it? So can you find in your mind a crucible? And I'm looking for things that people don't know about, people maybe in your childhood, or a
Hmm.
crucible. What was that point in your life?
Yeah, there's a number of them. I guess it all connects back to the cycles and rhythms of life, and you kind of go through things, and there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to different chapters of life. So going
Yeah.
all the way back to childhood, I'm originally born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and both of my parents are originally from Nigeria, so first generation American. And we lived when I was real young, we lived in Squirrel Hill, which is the second largest Jewish community in the United States. And so, I remember from a very early age seeing the contrast between the energy and the culture inside the home versus what I was seeing outside. And, very young, I didn't question it. It just the way it was. And at the same time, there's a and again looking at the past through today's eyes, there's an element of confusion and not knowing what's right, what's wrong. And that was always, when I think back to my childhood, that was a main theme of always confusion about where I fit in, because at home, my parents, didn't really get along. There was um, a lot of strife between my parents, and it all goes back to their history growing up in Nigeria, because Nigeria was a British colony for a long
Mhm.
time. I believe it was 1960 is when they gained their independence. And once the British left, then the different tribes in Nigeria um, were not getting along. Kind of playing that same role that the old British rule used to play, and everyone's jockeying for position. They've got beef with one side for this reason, historical things. And my parents were from two different tribes. And so, coming over from, Africa to North America, I imagine, I can't speak for them, but I'm just going to fill in some blanks, knowing both of them, that, I believe that they believed that being here in the United States, that strife between their families didn't matter, but it did.
Yeah.
And I saw it, through domestic violence, a lot of really intense things that don't need to get into any details. But for me, it made me just want to be outside the house. Like I just didn't want to be there. Like as a kid, I got emotions, I got thoughts, I got things I want to say, but in that atmosphere, I felt like nobody was listening.
Yeah.
So I was always running outside with my brother, my sisters, my boys from the neighborhood, just playing sports. And it was the contrast of you know being at home and feeling like I didn't matter in this tribe to playing a sport, team sports, where all of a sudden I did matter. I was an important part of it and I was pretty good at it. So I was seen as a leader. And in that context, I felt good about being me. Like that was the first time I actually liked myself, was only when I was playing sports. Everything else in life back then as a child, it felt just tense and very unsure of myself.
So
And so,
that was like your place of your happy place, if you will. We
mhm,
always find a place where we can kind of hide and be
mhm.
content within ourselves. And so that was your place. So you had some really good friends. Were they friends or were they only sports friends?
No, well, as kids, when, I'm talking, 6, 7, 8 years old, it all kind of blend together. So, I just began to develop tying my identity, you know, the identity of coming from a home where dad and mom are always fighting, or, you know, coming from a Nigerian culture, being around, US, the challenge of being accepted at home, the cultural norms of where we're from at home versus what's acceptable with friends at school or in the neighborhood is, I felt more comfortable in that context outside the home because of sports. So to me, it all kind of blended together early in life, and I began to identify myself in that sports context. And so that's where my journey in sports began, where I decided at a very young age that I wanted to love myself like this forever.
Yes.
And that's what made me want to play sports. A lot of people always think like, okay, did you always dream of being on the Steelers? I know you're from Pittsburgh. It's like the funny thing, Dr. Betty, is that never crossed my mind. It
Oh, wow.
never crossed my mind. I kind of wanted to be out of Pittsburgh. So, like, because Pittsburgh was home, and home was I
Yeah.
wanted to, but the thing is, home is where I was, my greater purpose is beyond football, and home is where I was needed. And I didn't know what I didn't know as a kid, and I didn't know what I didn't know when I got drafted by Pittsburgh. But
Right.
now in hindsight, it's like, no, everything happened the way it was supposed to. And
Yeah.
so the challenges of being, a first generation, African kid in white society, the challenges of, not really understanding the dynamics between the definition of family. My definition of family was pretty messed up,
Yeah.
very early, and now I've redefined that. And if I didn't go through all the things I went through as a kid, and then talk about another crucible after I left the NFL, after I'd spent so many years building my identity, and then losing that, and kind of going through that cycle and rhythm again later in life, which is what led to what I'm doing now. Everything had to happen the way it did in order for me to serve my highest purpose and find my path.
I
So,
agree. I agree, and I see you, and and for those of you who are watching, I see you at your end state, and I see just someone who is a value-centered leader, and someone who is very well foundationally. You've got a very solid foundation today, and what I saw in you that caused me to want to have a deeper conversation with you is your higher purpose and your burning desire to really make an impact at the deepest levels for generations to come.
mm-hmm,
And
absolutely.
that's something that I think there's so many parallels in our lives, in your life and in my life. The domestic violence, I understand. The fact that relationship was just not my idea of relationship was being a submissive wife, even though
Mm-hmm,
mom was also in a domestic violence situation with my dad. And so
mm-hmm.
um, it's funny that my husband today, and I didn't tell you this when we spoke, my husband, we got married 15 years ago, and I had known him 25 years prior, and we
Hmm.
separated because of something that was so silly. I was asking a question, he gave the wrong answer, and I broke up with him
Right.
rather than asking the real question. And then he
Mm-hmm.
didn't know to ask the question behind the question. What is your
He's
question?
not
What do you mean?
he's not a mind reader.
No, he isn't. And so coming from a domestic violence or even a broken family, period, your
Mm-hmm.
view of what it's supposed to be like is warped. It's a different view. It's what one of my dear friends, Gloria, used to tell me, you're abnormal normal, and you tend to just
Mm-hmm.
see that as the norm, but it's really your abnormal normal. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I absolutely get that. Also, with your parents coming from Nigeria and, understanding the differences between the American culture and then the culture that your home culture. Same thing here. The cultures were so different. You didn't speak back to the teachers. You were back in Colombia. You were, more reverent of the authority figures and so forth. So speaking up was just not something that
Yeah.
is innate. Speaking up is something that's learned, and you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm being rude. Also,
Mm-hmm.
talking about yourself, I mean, you've been a champion NFL player for many years,
Hmm.
and you've been a champion in your mind before you became a champion. It's almost like you became a champion because your mindset got there, but the ability of you um, comparing yourself instead of to others, I'd love to kind of
Hmm.
take a look at that because that's a big deal in leadership, in an executive leadership today. What I found
Hmm.
was in all of my roles as an executive, I would come in and I would say, okay, so who's winning? Oh, we're going to be number one. And I'm like, number one? What was your very best? And let's talk
Hmm.
about that and let's compete against that. And you just look for being your best. So tell me about a little bit more about um, how you found your identity, when you found your identity, and as a
Hmm.
man, and as a father, and
Hmm.
as a husband first.
Hmm. It's interesting because, especially for a young black man, a young black boy growing up in America, you know, 80s, 90s, the examples of success for black men were in entertainment, musicians, actors, or sports. For the most part, you get into the 21st century and you start to have more examples, people like Barack Obama. But to me, making it to the pros as an athlete was the ultimate. I thought that that was as high as you could possibly climb. And, it was one of those things that it was like a North Star. So I'm always looking forward towards that my whole life as a kid. Even when I was playing outside, it's like, no, this is serious. Like, I'm doing something sacred here. That was me. My teammates, I don't know what they were thinking because I was focused on me. And, all the time, as a kid, you're thinking, when I get to the pros, everything's going to be all right. No more pain like it was at home, no more money issues, no
Uh,
more people looking at me like I'm less than because I'm black. I'm not black. I'm a Steeler now. So I thought that everything would make it to the pros would fix everything. And so it was this North Star that was always in the future. And then all of a sudden you get drafted and it becomes your present and you believe because you believe that when this happens everything is going to be all right, and so you believe that life is good now, and then all of a sudden you're going through this and you get really comfortable in that place, and then all of a sudden you get that phone call and your whole entire paradigm shattered and you're not who
yeah,
you thought you were, and now I'm back to square one. When I was a little kid growing up in Pittsburgh, like, who am I thought I was a football player. I thought this was my path. I thought this was my purpose. And all of a sudden it wasn't. And that's when things start to spiral downwards. And, lost a lot of relationships, personal relationships, business relationships, millions of dollars, and not to mention my emotions were all over the place. A lot of issues with my temper, a lot of issues with depression, and ended up in the hospital in 2016 for about 9 months, not consecutive months, but in the whole year it was about a total of 9 months. And the doctors couldn't figure out what the problem was. Even every test came back looking normal, but my symptoms were crazy. Serious headaches, sensitivity to light, ringing in the ears, couldn't concentrate. And so that's when I went down the rabbit hole on Google and found my coach. Now, my coach from Hawaii, I love this guy. He's always talks about what his uncle used to say in the native Hawaiian language, "Aohe pau ko ike ko halau," which means realize that not all learning comes from your school. There's a lot of other information out there that I hadn't considered because I just simply didn't know that I didn't know that it was even available.
yeah.
And so that's when I really reconnected with myself and started to realize that no, everything I need to overcome the challenge as a man now, I actually learned on my journey through football from being a boy to this moment in time where I, had all these problems. That was all of the things that were unconscious,
Hmm.
emotional trauma, generational trauma. What
Yeah.
landed me in the hospital was it was all coming to the surface. And so one thing with the ancient Hawaiians that I learned from my coaches, the ancient Hawaiians used to celebrate when that happens because they knew that that was you telling you that you were ready to deal with it and resolve it.
Yes.
You have
Yes.
to become conscious of it.
A hundred
Otherwise,
percent.
you can't do anything about it. So once I changed that perspective on the struggles I was having at that moment, that's when things, started to spiral upwards. Because it's like the way I put it is in life, everything's cyclical. Like, the moon goes around the earth goes around the sun. All the planets go around the sun. So everything's in a circle, nothing's in a straight line. And neither is our life. Everything's cyclical, cycles and rhythms. So, at different points in time from the struggle I was having at home, I found a way to take that cyclical nature of my life and start to spiral upwards as an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I believed I had arrived and then got the wake up call from my environment that no, you haven't, the circle kept going, but it just started going in reverse.
Yeah.
And then I got to a point where it's like that voice in my head is like, no, this isn't it. I want to feel like my best self again. I want to feel like I did when I would go outside and play. I want to feel congruent and aligned and happy and proud and grateful to be me. And that's where everything, I started learning about other cultures and reconnecting with my culture as an African, learning more about a lot of my knowledge of self comes through my study and learnings of the Hawaiian way. But at the end of the day, different languages, same point.
Yeah.
So it really, the Hawaiian uh, aspect of what I learned actually helped me connect back to myself in my lineage, my family. And so all of a sudden, I realized that all of the suffering that I went through as a child, or even all the suffering my parents went through as children through the Biafra, through the civil war that happened in Nigeria, and all of the suffering that their ancestors went through colonization and the slave trade and all these other things, that all of these things were part of my makeup.
Yeah.
And they weren't bad. They were necessary in order for me to fulfill my greater purpose now and to be
Yeah.
able to start a new trend for future generations.
It's funny. I was talking to a client and similar thing that happened to another coaching client. And they they said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed." And I said, "Yay, you're overwhelmed. Let's celebrate this. This is a really
Yep.
good thing." And they said, "Why am I supposed to celebrate this? This doesn't make sense." It's almost like counterintuitive, right? I'm so
Mm-hmm.
overwhelmed, it's a bad thing. No, you're overwhelmed. That means you're stretching, and that means you
Mm-hmm.
are ready to get to the other side when you're putting yourself out there. What happens is most people just go into this hole, and they hide rather than just stop and smell the flowers and see, okay, where are we? And how can I get to the other side? Am I afraid? Yeah, but do it anyway and get to the other
Mm-hmm.
side. So you're
Mm-hmm.
absolutely right. Tell us about when you lost it all. And you're down at the in and going a little bit deeper into your mind. What were the
Mm-hmm.
things that you were telling yourself when you lost it all, and who was around you at that time?
Yeah, you know, through my NFL experience, there was a lot of tension within my family between myself and my mother. My father actually, and again, this goes back to why I knew it was fate, if you will, that I need to be back in Pittsburgh because, my dad, um, he had cancer and he actually passed away while I was on the Steelers. It was just a couple of months before we won the Super Bowl. And so, I felt grateful to be there, to be present. Because if I was playing in Texas or in Seattle or something, that would have been a completely different thing.
Yeah.
But being able to, go to work and go to the hospital and see him and talk to him. And mind you, at that point, I was 26, going on 27. And I hadn't had a conversation with him in my entire life, not a real conversation until that time.
Yeah.
At that point, my dad and influences from his family, it essentially, it abused my mom and us as kids and then threw us out. Like he just literally threw us out and locked us out of the house. And that's how my parents ended up splitting. And so I never really had a relationship with, I knew him, but I didn't really have a personal
Right.
relationship with him until that time. And, you know, through that, through the turmoil of that experience with the male figure from our family passing away, created a lot of tension between myself being the new, you know, alpha male in the family, and, you
Yes.
know, and all of the emotional trauma baggage that, you know, my family, my mother, my sisters had dealt with. We really weren't getting along when I was in the NFL towards the end of my career. And so, you know, that kind of carried over into after. So I leaned on, you know, the relationships I had outside of football and outside of family, which were in my business relationships. And the thing is, you know, sometimes you mistake transactional relationships for deeper personal relationships.
Yes.
And, you know, not being, when emotions are up, your logic is off. And so a lot of the people I was relying on and confiding in, I probably shouldn't have been. And that's where, you know, things kind of went bad in those friendships and those business relationships, and you know, spilled over into the business aspect of it. And so to me, I ended up spending a lot of time alone. And that's, to me, was the key, because it was that little voice in my head as a child that was like, don't worry about it, just go play baseball. It was that little voice in my head that was like, no, you know, you can make it, you can play
Yeah.
Big Ten football, you can play NFL football. It was me. There was nobody in my environment telling me that as a
Right.
kid. And so then there's a cycle and rhythm coming back around. All of a sudden, nobody, everything in my external world is giving me a negative feedback, but the
Hmm.
voice inside was positive, and I needed to be isolated to reconnect with that internal voice. And that's where I started to really dive deeper into some of the things that led to my success from where I came from. And it's like, how are we going to do this again? And it really goes back to when I played football at Purdue. And, you know, I wasn't a highly recruited athlete out of high school. I didn't have a ton of scholarship offers or a lot of opportunity. I had one scholarship offer. That was it, Purdue University. And to me,
All you need.
I was ever grateful, ever true for, I was so grateful for that opportunity, because in my mind as a 17-year-old kid, I was like, I can only play for one team. So what else do I need? I just need one chance. But then after my first year, the only coach in America that thought I was any good, at least that was my story, he resigned. And I
Mhm.
freaked out. It literally, emotionally, I was reliving my dad leaving all over again.
Yeah.
And I found myself in a situation like, what am I going to do? All my visions for the future of being who I believe I'm meant to be are in jeopardy now. But it wasn't until I decided to go find something to set me apart. And, you know, playing Big Ten football, and eventually we end up going to the Rose Bowl and everything. But playing Big Ten football, we're playing against Michigan, Ohio State, you know, Wisconsin. Everybody's lifting weights, everybody's watching film, everybody's doing what they need to do to prepare to play physically. So I said, I'm doing the same thing. That doesn't give me any advantage. I need something more. And so I went to this used bookstore on campus and found it, just thinking this is all old information that nobody wanted. And I'm going to find something here that no other football players know. And
Oh,
I
nice.
found it. And I found it. And the title of this book is The Secret of Creating Your Future by Dr. Tad James. And I said, the secret of creating my future. This is what I want to know. So, you know, I was 18 at this time, grabbed the book, sat down on this dusty hardwood floor in the bookstore and just went deeper into it. After about 10 minutes, I put the book down. I said, I don't know what this guy's talking about. He's talking about energy and emotions in Hawaii and all this stuff. And I said, maybe this isn't what I need. And so I started to get up to find something else, but I was stuck. And it was like the title of the book was glowing at me, The Secret of Creating Your Future. So I need to know the secret. So I grabbed the book and just kept going deeper until it made sense. And then it clicked. I put the book down, I sat down, and I said, I think I get what he's saying. He's saying that for me, the world that I think is out there is actually all in here. And with learning this stuff that he's talking about, the ancient Hawaiians and the power of language, if I learn all this stuff, I can control what's in my mind. And so my 18-year-old logic was, well, what if I learn this secret, I can control my world. And then
Yep.
getting to the NFL is as good as done. And that's when I bought the book. And the thing is, this ancient Hawaiian, this ancient wisdom that I teach now, that I use as a coach, coaching executives, pro athletes, and whatnot. Ancient wisdom, modern application. That's I learned it that day in the bookstore at 18. But it
Mm.
was my it was my secret. I never told my roommate, I never told my
Oh,
teammates, I never told my coaches, I never told my mom. This was my thing. It was my secret. And I believed it was what was going to get me to set myself apart and to finally create the future that I saw for myself as that 7-year-old kid. And I did it. And then all of a sudden, when I got that phone call, then that vision, that paradigm was shattered. And I realized once everything falling apart and I was alone, I said, oh, wait a second, we've been here before. We've been here before. And so then that's when I, went down the rabbit hole, connected with my coach from Hawaii, and really reconnected with myself. And so then now I realized that the foundation of my professional life now isn't my experience as a football player. It's learning how to take control of what's going on in here,
yeah,
because what goes on in here controls what's going on in here. And their emotions are just energy in motion, emotions. And how that energy moves is all based on what story I'm telling myself about myself in the present, and all the things that happened in the past, being able to tell those stories in an empowering way, and only accepting stories about my future in which I am that in person, I'm that empowered individual that I believe I am in the moment. It's got to be aligned and congruent through and through. And so
I
once you do that, then it bleeds into life as a professional, as a parent, as a husband, as a friend, as a son, and you start to really show up authentic in every aspect, in recognizing that your role is, as those kids were right when I was outside playing baseball. I am a leader, not because I'm good at sports, but because that is, you know, God doesn't qualify. He doesn't choose the qualified. He qualifies the chosen. And everything I went through was to qualify me to do what I'm doing now.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I um I have a physics professor that teaches me every Friday morning, and I've had him for a few months. And one of the things that he taught me at the very beginning is there are three types of systems in the universe. There is a closed system, there is
Mm-hmm.
an open system, and then there is a hybrid system. And he calls it an isolated system, and that's how they call it in physics. The reason I started studying physics is because that's how God made the universe, and there are the laws of the universe, the natural laws of the universe, that
Mm-hmm.
when we go around along the laws of the universe, things flow easier than when we go against the laws of the universe. And everything
Yep.
that was made. So there are those three systems. The closed system is a system that does not allow anything coming in, any matter in or out. Only like
Mm-hmm.
energy. If it's hot, then the heat comes out. But if you can imagine a pregnant woman and the baby being inside of the baby, inside of the womb, it's a closed
Mm-hmm.
system because the amniotic
Right.
sag keeps the baby inside and keeps it safe. But
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like coming to America for me. I put up a wall so big that I would say you can't hurt me because of what I saw my father doing to my mom. And so people
Right.
wouldn't allow them. I wouldn't allow people to come and hurt me, but I also didn't allow people to come and love me.
Right.
So that's a closed system.
Mm-hmm.
An isolated system is a system that isolates itself. It's almost like you're in an island. You're open, but you're only open to this island, and you just don't allow other people. And then an
Mm-hmm.
open system is a complete open system that allows anything to come in and anything to go out.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've learned is you are like an open system with a filter, and which is the optimum system to have. Why a filter? Because and I tend to draw things. And so when you talked about having the positive things inside and then the negative things outside. Um, and so this is kind of what I drew when you were talking. And so you have
Hmm.
the positive inside, and then you had all of the negative outside. You almost had to isolate yourself and just really think about, okay, this is what I've got. So when you have an open system, so instead of this being closed, now it's an open system and you allow things in. When you have a filter that filters
Hmm.
what goes in, then what happens is you understand that people are going to be jealous, envious, mad, or want to bring you down. And that's
Hmm.
why you create that filter. You still an open system. And one of the things that I love about you, Chukky, is that you are an open system, meaning that you receive the wisdom and then you're here to give it away. You're not, I got
Hmm.
it and I got mine. And a lot
Hmm.
of people tend to do that, women in particular, well, because we don't work really well with one another in general. There's some exceptions, and I can tell you about incredible women in my life. But in general, we don't work well with one another. Look at Julie,
Right.
for example. She's amazing. Oh my goodness. Let me just tell you about Chukky.
Hmm.
Here's his number. And I do the same for her. And let's bring you
Hmm.
into D100. Let's do this. But what I see in you is your ability today as a man and as a leader and as a coach and as a speaker, that you have mastered the art of being an open system and being a positive individual who really imparts wisdom on society. And
Hmm.
as a result, by you doing this for leaders who affect leaders, you're making an even bigger impact.
That's the goal. That's the goal. You know, and it goes back to like some of the things that you mentioned. Two things I wanna speak on that you spoke about. You know, when you talk about the client who felt overwhelmed, you're like, "Yep, that's good. That's good." You know, again, that's the way in ancient times, a lot of cultures, that was the natural reaction. Is like, "Oh, this is good." Now we're like, "Oh no, this is something to run away from." So when people go into that hole and hide, it's like, who are you hiding from? If you're feeling overwhelmed, feeling that's something that's going on inside. So
Correct.
you can hide all you want. You're not getting away from it. And
No,
so, and if you just understand the way that the universe works, is these things are coming into your consciousness because it's something you need to learn. So, like a lot of the stuff I teach, especially, I teach, the ancient Hawaiian ways, and a lot of what I do, modern wisdom, ancient wisdom, modern application. So a lot of it comes down to those natural laws that you're
yep,
talking about that you learn through physics. And so I always like to connect my clients and teams, groups I'm speaking to, connect them to understand these laws. And so like even when we have the event here in February, going into the She Talks in March, that's part of what I talk about is these natural laws.
yep,
And so the way I put it is the Hawaiians were very metaphorical. So I always like to put these, you know, what do you call it? Psycho spirituality. I'll call it kind of
yes.
psychology, kind of spirituality. So psycho spirituality, I like to put it into what I call NFL, normal functioning language.
Yes.
And so the way I put it is, how do we align with the universe's laws? Well, the way I always put it like this: Mother Nature is a big woman. She's big, she's strong. And so my arms are not long enough to box with her. She will win every time. She will beat me down
Yes.
and make me regret ever challenging her. So what makes sense is to learn her rules and align myself with it so we
Yes.
can get along and I'll never have to fight here and she'll never hurt me.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, if you think you can run away from that feeling, that's you're fighting Mother Nature now,
You are.
and you're not going to win. You're not going to
Nope.
win. And so
Nope.
that's a big thing is understanding that overwhelm, that feeling, it comes into your awareness. If I feel overwhelmed, feel, that's one of the five senses. That's the kinesthetic sense of touch,
Mhm.
feeling.
Yeah.
So there's a saying that I learned, through, I actually first learned it when I was 18 from that book by Tad James. And the idea is, this was the one that made everything click for me when I was 18, is the idea of perception is interpretation.
Hmm.
Perception is interpretation.
Yes.
Perception, what does that mean? Perception simply means becoming aware of something through the five senses. I smelled something, I tasted something, I saw, heard, or felt something, like I felt overwhelmed. Overwhelmed, we'll get to the overwhelmed part, but just that feeling, becoming aware of that feeling, that's perception. Now, interpretation is to is the action of giving meaning to that which I perceive.
Yes.
So perception is interpretation, is I perceive this feeling and I interpret it to mean I'm overwhelmed.
Hmm.
And so as soon as I put a label on that feeling, it
Yes.
becomes my reality. And so here's the thing, is the feelings inside me. So I get to choose what label I put on it.
Yes.
And most people don't believe that they have that power. You do have that power. To me, it's like, if I'm feeling it and it's not killing me, that's actually a sign from myself that, you're about to elevate the way you live.
Huge.
Once you don't label it, just observe it. Pay attention to this moment. I feel overwhelmed. Okay, let's just call it overwhelmed for a second, because we got to call it something. So we'll call it overwhelmed. Does overwhelm have to be a negative thing? No, it's just a sign that, hey, maybe it's time to step back. Or, one of my clients, she says, you got to zoom out of the picture sometimes. Just
Yeah.
zoom out and look at the whole picture, so that you can decide how you're going to navigate this, how you're going to redefine this, how you're going to change that feeling that you're perceiving. Obviously, it's uncomfortable.
Yep.
So, what can I do to change the way that this feeling, to change the way I feel,
Yep.
so that I can change because that emotion becomes the energy behind all of my actions. And most people don't know that they don't know that thinking is an action, speaking is an action. And
Yeah.
so,
Because
the
thinking, your brain did you know that when you're sleeping, your brain uses more calories than your thigh muscle when you're running
hmm,
up speed?
wow, I didn't know that.
It's huge. Something that you bring up is equanimity, the word equanimity. And the word equanimity, Equanimity, equanimity. And the word
Hmm.
equanimity means seeing things as they are, not as you would want them to be. I taught that word in this concept 3 times to 3 different clients this week alone, because we tend to see what is happening to us in the interpretation of what is happening to us as reality. So
Hmm.
equanimity is the way I see it, and I learned this in my meditation in Vipassana. So it's almost like you put that situation right there.
Hmm.
And so I'm looking at this, whatever it is, and I put it right on my palm and I look
Hmm.
at it and I see what it is, seeing it as it is, not as you would want it to be. So observing it,
Wow.
use that word. This is what's so interesting about there's so many different areas where we just so think alike. And so seeing things as they are and then not reacting in a negative way and not attaching something negative to something that everybody else seems to be perceive as negative. So when this client said, I'm overwhelmed a few weeks ago, I said, yay, you're overwhelmed. When my kids were little, you're going to like
Hmm.
this story. I'm going to make it really short. When my kids were little, we had a big party at my house. And I believe it was my Goodbye Betty party before I went to get my doctorate. I wanted to set myself up to win. So I had like 45 people that I was going to tell, hey, I'm going to be away and, set me up to win. And we had platters and so forth. One of my daughters had a crystal platter full of food, and the music
Hmm.
was going, and people were all over the house, and the platter fell down on the marble floor of this one room I had. And you can imagine
Hmm.
the noise that it made. And
Right.
we could hear everybody in the room that was an invitee go, oh, and my daughters and I instantaneously went, yeah. And the kids were like 8 years old, or now 28, 29, 30. And
Hmm.
um, and that's the reaction they got to something that fell. And my idea back then, and it's something that you and I are talking about, when something goes wrong, it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. So stop and take a front row seat and see what opportunities are there that are going to take you to the next step. This
Hmm.
a client last week, I said, "Hey, this could be the best thing that happened to you."
Hmm.
It actually was the best thing
Absolutely.
for them. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, I love what you're teaching. I love the way that you go about educating your clients and the people that you speak at your audiences. In fact, man, I'm gonna invite you to do some speaking in some areas that I know,
Hmm.
because I just think that there's everybody in the world should be listening to you, and a lot of people that are stuck, they could actually learn how not to be unstuck. What do you think, now that you're away from the NFL and in this world of empowering and educating and helping people get to the very next level, to places they wouldn't even think of, and then creating that generational wealth? What is the one thing that, and before we go into the generational wealth piece, because I want to go into that next, but
Hmm.
in terms of their mindset, um, what do you think is the biggest thing that we as parents can teach our children?
Yeah, it's funny. I was just having a conversation with my wife this morning, and so a lot of times I like to start with the quick answer and then break down what my answer is. So the short answer, what can parents teach their kids, is never stop playing make believe.
Mhm.
Never. Because when you think about, obviously your children are grown, but you remember when they were really little.
Yeah.
And make believe was a game we all played when we were really little, when we were kids. So the kid, when they play make believe, the way the game is played, all I'm doing is telling myself a story about myself. That's the game. That's make
Yep.
believe. And so back then, when your kids were really small, those stories that they used to tell when they were playing this game were always empowering. And so, say things like, I'm a princess,
Yes.
I'm a football player, I'm a superhero. Never in your life could you ever imagine, even as a parent, when they were kids, overhearing them in the other room say, "Hey, let's play make believe." And your daughter says, "Yes, I love this game. I get to be anyone I want. Who am I going to
Yep.
be? I got it. I'm going to be the victim." They would
Nobody would do
never
that.
choose that. But
No.
as adults, we do it every day. And so at the end of the day, a lot of times, especially working with football players who have struggled with their transition the way I did, I always remind them, bro, before you left this job, would you have ever accepted a story about yourself in which you were not winning?
Hmm.
Say no. And I said, so why are you accepting it now? The thing
Yep.
is, whatever's happening, that feeling of overwhelm, there has to be a different story to tell about this, because it cannot be that I'm losing,
Right.
because I'm still, no matter how old we get, everybody's somebody's kid. And so we all were that kid who told those empowering stories and lost ourselves in the possibility of being that princess, that superhero, that football player. Don't ever allow your kids to lose that.
Yes.
And it's like, well, if I got all these victim stories, well, then give me a call. We can take care of that, because we got to, in order. A lot of times when I'm teaching these things, going to workshops, I've worked with retired military, first responders, police officers, and in the end, because I put it in NFL and use a lot of, metaphors, analogies, instead of talking about quantity, I can get real nerdy with it and use jargon, but then I lose people. So I like to paint the picture with stories, kind of the way that the ancient Hawaiians did, or the medicine men or the
Just like
shamans or whatever.
Jesus did when he came on this earth. It's,
Exactly,
talked
exactly. And so
about parables.
a lot of
Yeah.
times they'll say, "Oh, you should talk to my kid. You could really help my kid." And I said, "I I could talk to him, but you're the number one influence in their life. So the best way I could help them is to help you."
Yep.
And it's how many times do parents we want the school to fix our kids, but realizing that at school, how many meals do kids typically have at school? One, lunch, right?
Mhm.
Which
Lunch.
means they're having breakfast. Generally speaking, they're having breakfast and dinner with you. So you have twice as much influence on what the value of what they're putting in themselves. Lunch is food, but it also during that time, sitting at the table, all their friends are putting stuff into their mind.
Mm-hmm.
So at breakfast, as a parent, what are you putting in their mind? At dinner, what are you putting in their mind? What is the vibration of the house when they're going to bed? Because that is going to permeate until they wake up the next morning.
Yes.
And all of those things, oh, you put the kids to bed and now you're fighting and you think it's not having an effect? No, it is because that energy is going to dominate over whatever the school is doing. And so it's all about understanding the story of ourself as a parent, how that story relates to my story about us as a family,
Yes.
and how does that story trickle down to the children? Because that's an example of what I call the wealth beyond money. You can pass down all the money you want, but if you're if a parent is stuck on their victim story, then your child's going to have that same story and associate that to the money that you left to them. And then, especially working in banking and finance the way you have, then families wonder why 2, 3 generations that money's gone.
Yeah.
And it's all because you pass down the wealth, the generational monetary wealth, which is awesome. Do not leave out the wealth beyond the money.
I completely agree. There's more things that, I've always thought that the things that matter the most in life are those that can't be bought.
Yep.
And people focus so much on the money, they forget that it's not just the money. Talk about generational wealth. Let's move to something a little bit different if you have another 10 minutes or so.
I got it's Sunday morning. I got all morning.
Awesome.
so,
That's awesome. Thanks.
so
And I want to talk about generational wealth because I have a personal uh, focus on generational wealth because of my dad. When my father died, he was wealthy and he never thought about putting things in place to make it easier for us to inherit and to do something with the
mhm,
generational wealth that he left behind. And um, because I'm a banker or I've been a banker, I was asked to take over and pretty much handle all of it. And he made it really difficult because he didn't get together with the right people to get the right documents in the whole planning process or any of that. So I had to kind of go back. And so after I went through that situation, I made it my own mantra to just really help people with how do you take over a state and how do you create something that is generational and how do you make it simple? It's not always easy, but it's always simple. How do you make
mhm,
it simple for people to really receive the wealth and maintain the wealth so that 4 generations that wealth doesn't leave? The statistics are staggering of how much
mhm,
wealth is completely lost in one
mhm.
generation. Most of
Right.
it because they didn't work so hard to earn it. They just received it. And then a lot of the people are not used to having that much wealth. And so it's like the lottery winners. Most of my clients that were lottery winners were asking for 250, $500,000 loans right before they got the next check because they weren't
Mhm.
used to it. So walk us through your passion for generational wealth and how do you help people do that?
It goes back to It's funny how everything we're talking about ties together. And it all goes back to Mother Nature and those laws of nature. And so like what I've learned, through the Hawaiian culture, and these are esoteric learnings. They're not exclusive to Hawaii, but it's just the context in which I learned it. And so one of the laws of nature that I learned through the Hawaiian culture is the law of creation.
Mm.
And what the law of creation says is when two energies come together, they create a third entity that's more truer than the first two. And so when you think about two entities merging and creating a third, you're talking about having a child, creating a family. So that third entity is the family, and the child is a representation of this third entity. And so when you look at your story specifically about the challenges, some of the things you witnessed in your father, some of the challenges, that you witnessed in your mother before and after moving from Colombia. So when they created you, you are actually an evolution of the two of them. And
Right.
so it's like once they create a third entity, you are truer than the two of them. So a lot of the things that were unconscious to them that led to their behaviors, that led to their attitudes,
Oh, yeah.
all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, time out. I don't know. I get it because I get you because I came from you.
Right.
But what if that's my job to fix in this lineage? And
Hmm.
so when you talk about the fortunate couple of generations later where they didn't have to work for it, the thing is, isn't that the point of building monetary wealth is so that they don't have to struggle? You don't want them to struggle, but you do want them to get the lessons.
Yes.
And so and the thing is, that's where the universe, Mother Nature, God, Source, whatever label works for you, that's where that predetermined destiny, your higher purpose comes in. You had to go through going from feeling like a princess in Colombia to being broke in America. You had to go through it because how else am I going to get the learnings that for whatever reason dad was missing?
That's right.
How am I going to get it? And so you had to go through that to get those learnings to be able to take all of those experiences, the negative, the painful experiences, and preserve the learnings, integrate them into your being energy, and express that in everything you do as a speaker, as a banker, as a mother. And so all of a sudden, the link that your parents created in this chain in our lineage, you fortified and strengthened it in a way that each generation should be a little bit stronger than the next one, not
Right.
just on the bottom line, but in their mind and in their heart, and most
Yes.
importantly, in their spirit. And that's generational wealth beyond money, making sure that the Hawaiians saw it as each one of us are made up of four bodies. In Western culture, we have one body, that's the physical body, which is one of the four. But we each have a spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical body. And the generational wealth is learning how to be congruent and aligned in all four. And so that physical body isn't just your physiology, that's part of it, but it's your physical world, including anything you have,
Yep.
like money. So if your spirit's not right, if the story you're telling yourself's not right, and you're telling stories about the emotions as being negative, overwhelmed, angry, sad, depressed, not good enough, whatever, then that's going to be the energy you associate with what you have.
Yes.
Your family, your money, your job, your health, all of that's in the physical body, and it's a trickle down effect. So we got to first align ourselves with Mother Nature, make sure that our thoughts are consistent with understanding that Mother Nature loves me. And she would never if anything, if she wanted to hurt me, she could just end my life. But the fact that I'm here, I can presuppose that whatever's happening is because Mother Nature loves me. And so, because of that, I'm not going to tell this story because I know Mother Nature loves me. I'm not going to tell the story that I'm overwhelmed.
Right.
I'm going to say, what does this mean about the love that God or the universe has for me? And so, here's another analogy, more NFL. Every negative experience we have is what I call a banana. It's just a banana. And a lot of people, what do you mean it's a banana? I said, listen, imagine that kid, the kid that's playing make believe, has never, she's had broccoli and she doesn't like broccoli. Mm-mm. She's never had a banana. And so all of a sudden, you come and you say, here, I have something for you. You're going to love it. And they're like, what is this? Like, it's a banana. So, and so the kid goes, where did you get it? I said, it grew from the earth. And she's like broccoli? Oh, I don't want that. And like, no, 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 no. No, it's different. It's different. It's actually like the opposite of broccoli. It's sweet, it's nutritious, it's delicious. You're gonna love this banana. You're gonna eat them the rest of your life. And the kid's like, oh, really? Oh, thank you. You're like, okay. She's like, I can have this. She's like, I saved it just for you. It's your banana. And
Mhm.
the kid's like, awesome. Remember, I've never, how do I eat this? Because they don't know the basic instructions of how to eat the banana. So, but once they learn the basic instructions or the rules of nature and how to be this thing that nature created, this banana or your problem, whatever you want to call it, how do I get the value of this? Once you learn how, then you start to see how much more value there is than the stuff outside. Because what the kid did was they didn't know how to eat it. So instead of peeling it like we know, they turned it over to a little black thing and bit into it. And like, see, I knew it was like broccoli.
Mhm.
No, no, that's just the part on the outside to protect the value of the lesson. And so every heartache is just a banana. And what you need to learn how to do is peel it. Get rid of the part that doesn't taste, sound, look, or feel so good. Get rid of that. And you'll see how much more value there is inside that experience. And here's the thing, we live in a world of GMOs because we got to produce a lot of food for a lot of people. So bananas have been engineered to take the seeds out, like watermelons, right? But
Mhm.
the way Mother Nature created it, bananas have seeds, which means once you learn to take your that painful experience and peel the banana, not only is it going to nourish you in the moment, but it's going to nourish the future generations. Your job in your generation is to peel that banana and get the learning. And if you take that learning and impart it on the next generation, then that wealth beyond money will continue to the law of inertia. There's the physics kicking in. The law of inertia is going to continue to grow generation to generation, and the association with the monetary wealth becomes that love that the universe has for me. It's so simple, but it's not simple and easy are not the same thing. But the thing is, a lot of times I'll say, going to my process and how I teach it in the basic instructions, the 4 steps. So the first step is peeling that banana, or what I say, release. Release, letting go of the past. And people say, yeah, but that's difficult. And I say, yeah, I can appreciate that. It was difficult to tie my shoes when I didn't know how to.
Mhm.
It was difficult to ride a bike. I remember when I went to new school in 3rd grade and they had those cursive letters up above the board. And I'm like, I just learned how to write them the regular way. You want me to do that? But eventually, now I'm writing my name like this. So once you learn the basic instructions of how to let go of the past, it becomes as easy and natural as tying your shoes, riding a bike, or writing your name. You just
That's
have to make the decision is I want to get as good at letting go of the past as I am at tying my shoe. And once you make that decision, that's when they come see people like yourself. And let me show you. Like, okay. And then step by step, for a long time riding that bike, dad had to hold the back of the seat. But eventually the goal is to be able to ride on your own.
yeah.
And that's where coaches, that's what I help people do is learn how to peel those bananas, get the learnings, put the positive energy that the experiences, the value of what the universe has provided, put that behind all of your actions, and don't be stingy with it. Don't be greedy. Share it with the world, because then we as individuals can play our part to raise the vibration of everyone and make the world a better place. Whether you live on an island like Hawaii or you live in a country the size of China, it's the same principle.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So
Mm-hmm.
the first step is taking the peel off and
Mm-hmm.
learning. It's always difficult until it's not. right?
Yep.
It's not when you take
Precisely.
time to really educate yourself and you get somebody like yourself to coach you through it. Because a lot of the times when you're in it, you can't
Hmm.
really see it. But like my friend Michael Gerbert, who wrote more books on leadership than anybody all over the world. And he says,
Hmm.
when you're in it, you can't see it. But when
Hmm.
you're on it, you can. And sometimes it's difficult for the person who's in it to be on it at the same time. And that's why you need someone who can take a look at it from a different perspective and then
Yep.
help you get on it. So it's
Yep.
difficult until it's not. So that's the first piece. And then
Hmm.
there's three more steps after that. What are the
Yes.
rest of the steps?
So basic instruction number one is release, let go of the past, peel that banana. Basic instruction number two is okay, I know what happened in the past. Now I'm not feeling, I let go of the anger, let go of the guilt, let go of the shame, the sad, oh, peel that banana. And so I got the lesson. Okay, cool. Now I'm not angry, I'm not lit up, I'm flat. Basic instruction number two is what do you want your future to be?
Mhm.
That future may be next week. It may be my next romantic relationship. It might be my next child. What do you want the next chapter to be? And so basic instruction number one, release the past. Number two, decide your specific desired future result. And so what it really comes down to is a lot of times people will say, whenever I get into a discovery call with a coaching client, I'll say, okay, first thing I need to know is what's your goal? And they'll say, oh, I want to grow my business. I want to start a new career. I want to get out of this job. I want to be an entrepreneur. Awesome. My next question is for what purpose? And a lot of times it'll be like, well, I want to make more money. I said, well, how much money you want to make? Well, I want to make $1 billion. Awesome. $1 billion for what purpose?
Mhm.
And a lot of times people don't have an answer to that. And what I say is like, listen, if I offered you, like, I remember when I was younger, I used to really be into material things, and I had like my dream car, right? It's like when I get to the NFL, this is the car I'm gonna get. I'm gonna get wheels bigger than anything you ever seen on a wagon, and we have a
Yeah.
system that's loud, and so I had my dream car. And so like I'll say to the client, I say, if I offered you a choice between your dream car or the exact money down to the last penny that would enable you to purchase this dream car, which one would you choose? I say, well, I would just get the car. And I was like, so you don't actually want $1 billion, do you? What do you want? And it's like, so the thing is, billion, you can't drive $1 billion.
No,
You
you
can sleep
can't.
on it. You can't
Yep.
sleep on it. You could, but it's not the most comfortable bed. And the thing is, when you have that money, what is life going to look like,
Mhm.
sound like, and more importantly, what's it going to feel like for you?
Yep.
That's what you really want. And so, in terms of deciding what our future is going to be, with this basic instruction number two, is you got to look at it three-dimensional. You have to have the measurable. So, yeah, we need to have, if it's more money, you got to have a number so you can know if you're getting closer or how far away you are from getting to that reality. It's just a measurable. It's just, like a thermometer
Yep.
or a ruler. I just want to see how far away I am. But once you hit that number, what is your expectation around what the story of your life's going to be? What is your expectation about how you're going to feel about being you, about living your experience, about doing the job that you do as a parent, as a professional? That's the most important thing is what do you want next? I let go of the past, what do I want in the future? And once you have those two things, now you realize everything's happened the way it was because now that I have the learning from peeling the banana, I can apply this learning to create the new reality that will feel nothing like that banana peel. And and these are the things that a lot of, especially in this world where, in the atmosphere we're living in right now in the US, where, money seems to be the rule of thumb. The thing is, the Hawaiian, I think back to before westernization of the world and a lot of native cultures, even though Europeans are natives of Europe. So everyone's native, believe it or not.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, what we call native cultures, they didn't have money.
No,
Or they had the barter system. So it's like, hey, you're a banker, a mindset coach, Dr. Betty. I really need some help with my finances. How about you help me with my finances, and I give you some mindset and emotional coaching? He's like, okay, cool. So I put all of my energy into coaching you. You put all of your wisdom, experience, knowledge, and energy into helping me get my finances right. So it's an exchange of energy.
exactly.
But what happens later is like, you know what? I just won the lottery, and now I got more money than I've ever had before. I need some more help. I can give you some more coaching. And you're like, Chukky, you solved all of my problems. I don't need any more coaching. But you know what I do need? Some bananas. If you get me some bananas, I give you all the financial help you need. And I'm like, shoot, I got to go find somebody with some bananas. And so I get to them and they want something else. So then I got to go find somebody else to get, and it's these 3, 4 way trades. And it got complicated. So we came up with this thing called money to make the exchange of energy easier, which it did. But the thing is, back to Mother Nature and the laws of nature, it's what you call the law of harmony. Everything in life is made up of a dichotomy of positive and negative, positive and negative. So all you have to do is look around you at any point in history, and you'll see this law at play. You've got man, you've got woman, you've got day, you've got night, you got hot, you can't cold, you got cold. I can't even make sense of the color black without white. So with the benefit of making the exchange easier, we also are going to get a negative effect. And what's the negative effect of what the effect that money's having on us as a society is now the responsibility of the exchange of energy is now outside of me. It's not my fault, it's Ben Franklin's fault. So when I look at I go home, I look to my right, my neighbor's got a new Audi. I look to my left, my other neighbor's got a new BMW. And I look at Benjamin Franklin, I'm like, this is your fault. Why don't I have a Mercedes? No, 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 no. You are the energy that determines what you have, not the money. And so what we've done is given all our power to the almighty dollar. But before money, people had power. They were empowered. And now in a world that's very externally focused, we're looking at social media, we're looking at YouTube, we're looking for the next guru. I'm going to another Tony Robbins event. It's like I love Tony Robbins. There's so much I love about Tony Robbins, but at what point am I going to be able to make myself feel that way without having to spend ever much money or fly all the way to God knows where and spend all day in a football field sized stadium, letting him make me feel better? It's almost like we're, money, other people are the Wizard of Oz. And I can't manifest, for lack of a better word, I can't manifest the car, the house, the relationship, the money I want without Tony Robbins, without the wizard. And it's like, no, you're the wizard.
Yes, I completely agree. I love that. Okay, so
Mhm,
you've now taken the the banana, you've peeled it, and
mhm,
now you've taken whatever came from the past, and now you know what you're going to manifest because you now can taste it, you can smell it, you can feel it, you know
mhm,
exactly what your future is going to feel like and be like. And then what?
mhm. Basic instruction number 3: take the actions that are going to lead me to my desired future. And so it's like, I think back to, coming from where I came from, the situation I was in as a kid, to coming home as a Steeler, coming home as elite royalty, NFL. And a lot of things had to happen along the way, a lot of learnings, but a lot of action. In order to play football, I have to lift weights, I have to run, I
Yeah,
got to watch film,
yeah,
I got to study, I got to get rest, I got to. Back in the day, I had to go to class, I had to go to school. If you want to play football, you're gonna have to go to school.
yeah.
There's a lot of actions that have to be taken in order to get me from this
Point, point B. Yeah.
African kid living in a Jewish community to the NFL. A lot of actions got to be taken. The thing is, without the basic instructions are like a recipe. They need to be followed in order. So first, I got to peel the banana. I got to stop feeling like I'm not good enough. I got to stop telling this story that I'm angry or I'm hurt or I'm sad or I can't or I'm not. Those are all, that's the banana peel. I got to get rid of that first so that, boom, preserve the learning, get back to just feeling whole, neutral, or the word in Hawaiian is pono, get pono. Then decide where I'm going next. And all of my actions have to be with that result in mind.
Correct.
And anything else is a distraction. Anything else is a distraction. So like mentoring uh, college football players. This was back in 2015. A couple guys that went to Purdue were going into the NFL, and I spent about a week with them. Went up to school and just connect with them. And I told them, I said, listen, if you even want a chance at getting drafted into the NFL, you've got to be an NFL player. And I remember one gentleman, he actually ended up playing in the NFL for about as long as I did. And he's like, yeah, that's what we want. We want to get drafted so we can play in the NFL. So you're not hearing me. An NFL career is having energy. Being energy is having energy is that physical body, is the
Yeah.
physical, the money, the strength, the car, the house, the girl, whatever. That's all physical. Being is spiritually, you've got to believe that you're an NFL player, that you're worthy of this, and that it's your purpose. You've got to have a plan as to how you're going to approach getting from wherever you are now to realizing your destiny. And your emotions have to be positive and compelling so that they move you towards what you want.
Yes.
Because a lot of times, if I didn't let go of the past, then my emotions are anger, fear, and all I'm doing is running away from what I don't want. That's not going to work. You have to be moving, compelled to move towards what you want. And so it all goes back to Mother Nature and energy. Energy in motion is emotions. So your emotions, the emotion behind your actions when you're lifting, when you're running, when you're communicating, whatever you're doing has to be consistent with what you would see, hear, and feel if you had an NFL career.
Yep.
And if they don't match, good luck to you.
Yep. Not going to happen.
It's not going
And
to
if it
happen.
happens, it's going to be temporary because you didn't really get rid of everything from the past and bring
Mm-hmm.
it to the present. And now you have a plan. When you have a plan, it's like success is when opportunity meets preparation, right? So you've
Mm-hmm.
got
Yeah.
to be able to have this plan. And having the plan and putting it in the shelf, it's no good either. It's having the
Yeah.
really implementing that plan. So what's the last piece?
The last piece is let go of the past. We know what we want. We're ready and willing to take the actions. Now all we got to do is be present and stay focused on the path because it's all about the laws of physics or laws of nature.
Yep.
And this is where the law of inertia kicks in.
Mhm.
So, things that are in motion tend to stay in motion.
Yep.
Things that are at rest tend to stay at rest. So you can have an inertia of being still. You can create
Yep.
inertia of inaction. It's very possible. And so it's like if I continue to cultivate my spirit, my mindset, my emotions, and I do that in a cycle that let that become the regular cycle and rhythm of my day-to-day life, then if I stay focused on that, on being congruent in that cycle and be present on the path, being realistic and seeing things, that equanimity, seeing things as they are. Like, okay, if I'm going to be an NFL player, I realize I'm only in 10th grade right now. You got to be
Yep.
present in 10th grade and
Absolutely.
recognize that what I'm doing is building the inertia so that naturally, when the time comes and I'm 22 years old and I graduated college and I played my career, inertia should take me to the NFL. The laws of nature should take me there.
Yep.
And so that's the big thing. The funny thing, I actually want to go back to a word that I used that I actually want to change. And it's basic instruction number 3. There's a difference between a plan and a strategy.
Mm.
What you want to have is a strategy, not a plan, because a plan is more like I know exactly what's supposed to happen. But you don't know exactly how it's going to come in. And so that's why if I was a kid and said, you know what, I want to play, I'm only playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers and nobody else. But what if playing for the Denver Broncos would indeed give me
Yes, I
what I
love
want to see, what I want to hear, what I want to feel? You've got to give room for Mother Nature or God to deliver. If you tell them it's got to be like this, you're narrowing
you
the
are.
possibilities of
Yep.
what you're allowing to come in. And
Yes.
so to me, it's strategy is like, so I would say the plan is like, this is specifically what I want, which is okay, but just recognize that you may get what you want to see, hear, and feel, and it may not fit all of the criteria.
Yep.
It may not be exactly what you want. If I say I want this house, 555, Aloha Lane, that's the house I want. But what is that house? Well, it's 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. It's got a pool. It's got a backyard. It's got this deck. I always wanted a white picket fence. That's exactly what I want. Okay. But what if 777 Aloha Lane has all of those things? It's like, nope, I want 555. It's like, time
And then
out. You see
and
what I
then
mean?
some. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, that's why I just want to differentiate between having a plan is like, know specifically what you want, but that specific plan and that end result is what I'll call a symbol. It's a symbol of what I want. It's a symbol of the feel, the vibration that I want to
I
feel.
like that. I like that
No,
word better. Yes,
you
I
know.
love the fact of symbol. Thank you for teaching me that because
Mhm.
we've always thought about, we always anchor ourselves in the future, right? Those of us who are planners or those of us who have reached a certain level, we anchor ourselves in the future. And 15 years ago, I anchored myself on my vision of what I wanted my life to be. And lo and behold, I wake up 15 years later, actually less than 15, and I'm living the life of my dreams. And how did that happen? Well, we installed it into our mind. We got rid of everything. And then your process is just so amazing. And what I love about your process, Chukky, is it's nice and simple.
Mhm.
Anybody can actually follow your process. Um,
Yep.
if anybody would like to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
I've got two websites actually. Basicinstructions.com
Okay.
is, my web, that's the website for me, as well as Ali'iFamilyAdvisory.com. Ali'i is like Ali, like Muhammad Ali, apostrophe I, Ali'i. And so Ali'iFamilyAdvisory.com. The Ali'i were the Hawaiian royal family before westernization. And so it's really, that's where that name comes from. But the simplest is, again, you can find me on YouTube. And as far as social media, Instagram is always the best bet. So that's ChukkyyOkobi 56 is the handle on Instagram. And yeah, just reach out, and then also, I'm on the other social medias, X and Facebook, LinkedIn, obviously. And so that's the best way to reach me. The big thing is we're getting the process is simple. And those 4 steps, it's like apply it in your life where it resonates. And so like I remember I was speaking at a high school and went over these same things with kids. I've taught this to fifth graders and venture capitalists in Manhattan, and it's the same principles. And I remember a kid was like, "Well, can you explain to us, you know, how to become empowered and get our result?" And it's like, I just did. It's these 4 steps. Like, yeah, but what am I supposed to do? And I said, see, listen, I can't tell you what you need to let go of. Who am I to tell you you got to let go of this? I don't know what you want, And so therefore I don't know what actions you should take,
Right.
nor do I know how far away you are from where you are to where you want to be. So it's really about self-examination and having somebody like you, like myself, like my coach from Hawaii, to give you this perspective. And so I want to give you this one last analogy that something you brought up, and it brought this
Yeah,
this
go ahead.
analogy. Being a football player, you don't have to know anything about the sport. If you've ever seen one football play, you see how chaotic it is on the field. People just run around, hitting each other, all kinds of stuff. So I play center, the guy with the football who gives it to the quarterback. That was my position. So if I'm in a stadium like here in Kansas City, in Arrowhead Stadium. It's loud, the loudest stadium on the planet. And I'm on the other team. I play for Pittsburgh, so it's really loud. And so rain's coming down. Doesn't matter what the weather's doing. We're playing this game. So the rain's coming down. My uniform's soaked. I get to play. I walk up to the line of scrimmage. If there's anybody in front of me that I have an assignment to block the guy, I can see him because he's right here where I'm focused. But there's
Mhm.
a lot of things happening around me when I'm down on the line of scrimmage doing my
Right.
job that I'm not aware of. Like, I don't know if the people behind me are where they're supposed to be. And I've done my job perfectly. I don't know how many times playing football and the play didn't work. And I'm saying to myself, I did everything right. Why didn't that work? Because when you're in it, you can only see what's in front of you.
That's
The only
right.
way to get the full perspective, there's only one place in the whole stadium, and that's in the press box. That's why there's a coach up there. And so, like when you see a quarterback of football, sometimes you see him on the phone on the sideline. It's
Absolutely.
usually after a drive that didn't go so well. And he's
Absolutely.
like, Coach, they got 50 guys. I can't find any. What am I supposed to do? And the coach is here to say, hey, calm down. Let me give you the full picture so
Yes.
that you can make adjustments, learn the lessons from the thing that didn't work, make adjustments, and go out there and meet your objective. And so, when you talk about people being in it as opposed to on it, it's what I call, you got to go to the press box sometimes. You got
I
to
love
get out of it and just go to the press box and look at it. And the thing is, if you still have the story about everything's wrong, everything's messed up, I'm overwhelmed, that's where maybe you need somebody to help you peel that banana so
absolutely.
that we can get that emotion to quiet down so that the kid can think of a better story.
And that is a perfect way to end our conversation. And you know what, Chukky, that is the best definition of why we need a coach and we need someone like you to keep people on it while they're in it and to be
Mm-hmm.
able to really learn the lessons and be able to pivot when they need to pivot and then be able to anticipate. It's really hard to anticipate when you're in it. You've got to be able to be on it. So
Yep.
thank you so much. So Chukky, you call yourself the African kid living in a Jewish neighborhood or community that went
Mm-hmm.
to the NFL. What a beautiful way to take a look at your career. I thank you so much for being
Mm-hmm.
here with me and for agreeing to spend this time together. It's been
Mm-hmm.
a very edifying time, and it will be a very edifying time for a lot of people who will get to watch either pieces of this or the entire interview. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just really truly blessed to know you.
Yeah. Well, I feel really grateful, just to be able to connect with somebody such as yourself who's, has peeled a lot of bananas and learned a lot of lessons and hasn't just kept all the learnings to yourself, but you're spreading it, especially at the level at which you're working, because it all goes back to the family, business, money. It's the leaders. It's like, who are we following? And the
Yes.
best way to heal society, don't care if you're black, white, or candy stripe, the best way to heal society is to help those leaders, help those people at the top so that they can impart their energy, their wisdom, their learning, their love on those that follow them in their relationships, in their families, in their companies, in their careers. So thank you for everything you do. Thank you for your time, your energy, your aloha. And I just look forward to reconnecting and seeing how we can collaborate and help even more leaders, more people, more modern day elite, if you will.
Yes. I love
So
that modern day Ali'i. Thank you
yeah,
so much.